Hello, 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 and welcome back to episode 2 to the formerly known as You Know Bald podcast with a new name, At the Helm, with your host, Justin Helms. Y'all get it. But yeah, shout out to Mark, my friend Mark, who I was telling him I made this podcast. I had some ideas for it, and I told him I came up with the name You Know Bald, which I should have known. Like, there's gonna be someone with a podcast already with that name. I look up and a dude in Philadelphia has a Sixers podcast. You know, ball. He had a pretty good one, so y'all go check it out and everything like that. I can't remember his name, but mostly Sixers basketball stuff, and had some decent videos. So shout out to him. Um, but it actually helped because now I came up with the best name I've had so far. Something that actually has to do with my name, At the Helm. Like, get serious. But I just want to go ahead and I'm starting to do something a little bit different. Last time when I uploaded my video on YouTube, it took 10 years to get it from Riverside, from where I filmed, to Premiere, to exporting from Premiere, to then YouTube, and then that took like 2 hours for it to just upload to YouTube. So I'm doing something a little bit different and trying to record my things in sections. So this is kind of my intro section. I'll record another section with my rankings, another one that will talk about the upcoming this week preview and stuff like that. And it'll help to just break up my episodes a little bit better so that y'all can watch them and not feel like you have to search through an hour-long video to figure out what you really want to listen to. So let me know what y'all think about that, how it looks in the end. I'm, of course, going to edit it all into a long clip, but I'm also going to post smaller clips, like I said, so that y'all can figure out what you want to watch faster without having to look through the video to find when I talk about something that you feel is important. So that's kind of I just want to get that like a little housekeeping thing out of the way, and then just talk about basically why that last episode was late. I told y'all the uploading and everything like that took 10 years, and I procrastinated a little bit. So I will take credit for that, or the blame, I guess, for that. But yeah, we're still in the works trying to get this right. So thank y'all for bearing with me, first of all. And then also, I am still working on trying to fully get my stuff set right with Anchor. I got Anchor so that it could go ahead. I posted my podcast, the last one, the college football week 2 like preview on there. But for some reason it kept saying something was wrong with Apple Podcast and trying to set it up. So that's something that I'm gonna have to figure out. And the other thing is I might have to end up making a new YouTube channel because of the name change. I'm not sure how you change your name yet on YouTube. That's something that I'm looking into, trying to change it for Spotify as well so that it knows that I'm no longer You Know Ball, that it just like it can keep that same episode I already have uploaded, but just change the name. So these are all things that I'm just working on and trying to get right. So please bear with me. If you're looking for my podcast, it's At the Helm Podcast, formerly You Know Ball. I'm pretty sure you can look up either one and still find it. Eventually down the line, I'm hoping so that you can only look up one and find it. And of course, that will be At the Helm. So thank y'all for bearing with me and listening to me blab about my housekeeping things. Okay, so let's go ahead and get into the second section of this episode. This is what did I learn this week, and here is what actually happened this week. And I'll start off with what did I learn this week. I learned a couple things about two quarterbacks. I would like to start off with Michael Penix Jr. He went out there against Michigan State, a solid defense, went 24 for 40, had a good game. I think it was 2 or 3 touchdowns. I have to go back and look again, but went out there and just balled, honestly. Like 24 for 40 isn't the number that you would quite like to see, just a little bit over 40%, right near that 60% line. But at the same time, if you watch that game, like we said, like I said, I said we, but like I said, Michigan State has a good defense. Like they have a solid defense. That was nothing to just go out there and think that you can just run through easily. And Michael Penix Jr. did a good job of handling that. 4 touchdowns, 397 yards, so just under 400, and 24 for 40. Did a great job of keeping that game really out of touch for Michigan State. Washington got out to a huge lead to start. Michigan State got a couple scores in between then, but just never really got truly into being able to challenge Washington to go ahead and stuff like that. So game ended at an 11-point difference, which I think was the smallest difference in that game, other than, I mean, the first few scores that Washington got. So I mean, shout out to Michael Penix Jr. He went out there and showed that he could potentially be a top quarterback draft prospect in this year and the coming year's draft. So, and he is a junior, if I'm correct. Yeah, he is a junior. So he can't come out in the draft this year, and he looks like he could possibly be one of those top pick guys. So far this season, already 1,079 yards in 3 games and in 10 touchdowns to 1 pick. Like, those are numbers that are hard to just like look at and be like, oh, it's fake. Like, if you go watch him, he's the real deal. Like, he's reading defenses, he's anticipating throws, he throws his receivers open, putting guys in the right place and stuff like that, making it into spots that you don't normally see college quarterbacks be able to do. So I have to give a shout out to him, being able to get that done over there against Michigan State. And then the other thing I learned was Anthony Richardson. Man, I wanted Anthony Richardson to be real so bad, but he's just not. Anthony Richardson went out there, 112 yards, 2 picks. Did not look good against South Florida. He's yet to throw a touchdown so far this season as a quarterback. And like, I hate to say this, but Emory Jones Part 2. And that's the Hawk, because they talk so much. Florida Gators fans, I mean, the team, the coaches, like, hyped up Anthony Richardson so much to be just like this great quarterback and a guy who's really going to push to make a challenge and all this other stuff. And even last year when he was sitting behind Emory Jones, people were talking about, why isn't Anthony Richardson getting a chance? Because like in the flashes that we all saw, he looked to be solid. He looked like he could potentially be better than what Emory Jones was. And people were confused why he wasn't starting over Emory Jones. And now we're figuring out why. Like, I can't just, it's hard for me to just sit here and say like Anthony Richardson is just worse than Emory Jones right now. But like, they're about equal. Like, it made sense that he didn't take the job from Emory Jones. Like, I don't think anything would have changed last year based off of what I've seen so far this season. Went out against Utah. Florida played a good defense, and he made some highlight plays and stuff like that. But overall, it just, like, when you watch him, like, he struggles with accuracy. He struggles with reading defenses and going through his progression. So it's going to be a minute. And I think he's only a sophomore, so he still has time to, or no, he's actually a junior, but he still has time. I think probably at least 2 years of eligibility left to see if he can get better. But as of right now, he's not that guy. Like, you're not that guy, pal. But that's tough for Florida, because I really wanted them to be real just for the sake of Georgia having more competition in the East. But I'm going to go into my here's what happened this past week. This past week is there's no other better way to put it. It is a boring version of Cupcake Week. I explained what Cupcake Week was last week whenever all these group of 5 schools get paid millions of dollars to go up and see if they have the chance to upset someone in a Power 5 conference. And we saw 3 upsets last week, which is what made it more exciting and more, I don't know, just intense last week to be like, whoa, like, what is going on in college football? Like, there's a lot of upsets. Notre Dame, A&M go down. Nebraska, I don't know if that really meant anything to anyone, but like, it's just crazy to see like those teams going down. And now we saw Notre Dame this week too. So, I mean, I don't know what they're doing right now. I mean, new coach, new system, all this other stuff. We won't get into that, but that's a story for another day. But I do think that this week was just a lot more boring. Like, it just really wasn't any upsets other than Washington, and that was one that was a little bit predictable. If you looked at those 2 teams and just broke down what exactly they were, Michigan State is a defensive team that has a quarterback that can manage the game really well. He can put up some nice numbers, but he's not going to go out and win you a game in Thorne. And Washington has the same thing, but a quarterback that can win you a game. And I just talked about it. Like, he went out there and looked great, and he won them the game. Like, quite simple. And A&M, they upset Miami. I mean, A&M was supposed to be better than Miami anyway. I think they just had a weird week against App State that they shouldn't have lost that. I don't think they're as big and bad as they tried to make themselves seem out to be in the offseason, but at the same time, I still think that they are a team that is a serious option in terms of teams that can challenge the top teams in the SEC, like teams that can challenge Alabama and Georgia is basically what I'm saying. A&M, Arkansas, Tennessee, Florida, not Florida anymore, but Tennessee, Kentucky, possibly Vanderbilt. I don't know what's going on, but Vanderbilt has been looking solid. So I think that I like A&M is still one of those teams. You know what I'm saying? So I, that's an upset. But I mean, it was kind of a surprise that Miami was able to just jump up this far and kind of make the start they did off rip with a new coach and everything anyway. So still hoping that they can challenge Clemson. Please, 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 fingers crossed, them in Wake Forest. And we already talked about Florida sliding by barely. And then the last one was Oregon over BYU. Oregon went out and proved that we're not just scrubs. Georgia's just amazing. Like, Georgia went out there and made them look worse than what they actually were. BYU, I think, went into that game ranked like 12. Like, they were ranked in the between 10 and 20, and then Oregon was like 22, 23. Like, they were back far near the end. And Oregon went in there and really took care of business. Bo Nix able to get it done. We all know Bo Nix at times can show good things, but overall, he's just not the quarterback that is going to win you a championship. Oregon was right at 25, just barely on the line, but they went out there 41-20, really put it down onto BYU. It wasn't close except for like the first quarter. It was 10-7. You get to halftime 24-7, and it just kind of ran on from then. And BYU was able to put up some late touchdowns at the end of that game. Bo Nix threw a pick. So what's new? But yeah, I think that Oregon is really has a chance to be still a top team in the Pac-12, along with USC, along with BYU, along with Washington. So I think that they can still challenge. They're not going to win that conference, and they're not going to be a championship contender. But it was just, I guess, eye-opening to see that Oregon's not just bad. Georgia is really just that good to make them look that bad. So, yeah, that was really crazy to see. And I would say that's what I learned this week in kind of a short overview of what happened. And I guess if this is indicative of what the ranking show is going to be, the ranking show, there's not much that is going to change within my rankings. If you remember them from last week, is more just like a reordering of some of the teams. I think you might be surprised at the bottom of my rankings of some of the teams that I said got switched around or who got put in there. So, yeah. And we'll cut here, and I'll be back with the rest of my rankings tomorrow. So, different shirt, new light. You'll see the difference. Once again, like I said, we're going to put them all together, but I do also want to drop these in sections so that people can kind of just get short bursts of stuff like that. And I still am working on the TikTok account. I made the TikTok account. I just need to actually change the name now and then edit my videos in a way so that I can put it out onto that platform. So, stay tuned. I'll see you tomorrow. Yo, 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 yo. Back at it. And no intro really needed. I gave all that in the first part of the section of this episode or whatever. I let y'all know it's going to be cut up in pieces. So we're just going to go ahead and jump into it. Jump straight right into it. Either way. I don't know. Grammar. But and I already told y'all this episode or this part of the episode is going to be all about rankings. And I told y'all this is something I'm going to do on a weekly basis is give my rankings, the reason why I have them ranked like that, do a few honorable mentions. And at the very end of the episode, I'm going to talk about a few things upcoming this week in preview for week 4 of college football and some of the matchups we're going to see and what we should be looking out for. So, welcome back to At the Helm with Justin Helms, and let's get to it. Number one, my first four didn't change. If you remember my first four from last week, it didn't change. It's UGA number one, Ohio State number two, Bama is three, four is Michigan. I know a lot of people are kind of arguing back and forth on whether Bama should be two or three. And I think the biggest reason is just due to the fact that Bama started off this season as one or two, so it's like it's weird for them to see Bama drop twice from just one loss. But I the eye test, like watch Ohio State, watch Georgia, and then watch Bama. Bama isn't handling teams the way Ohio State and Georgia are. They go out and they just demolish a team. It doesn't look close. It doesn't look close when you watch it on the eye test. The score isn't close. Like there's just really no hope for the teams that have been playing them. And I can't say the same for Bama. There was no hope for ULM, of course. It was 63-7, but if you watch that game, ULM was able to drive a little bit more than a Bama fan in me would like to be comfortable with how they were able to run the ball and the certain passes they were getting off against our DBs and stuff like that. So right now, Bama's going to stay at number three. Not really going to go into the reasons with UGA number one and Ohio State two. We already know why. I just gave that. Four, I'm going to give that to Michigan still. That was, I told y'all, it's the same as last week. Michigan hasn't shown me anything to take them out of that spot so far this season. They have gone out and put up 50 in all three of their games, and then the most points they've allowed is 10. So they've allowed 17 points this season and given like over 160. So it's really hard to not put them in that conversation. I will say that UConn, Colorado State, and Hawaii are not the three teams you look at and be like, oh, this team is like amazing. So that's why I have them at four, because I do feel like Ohio State, they went out and beat Notre Dame. UGA, they went out and beat Oregon, who was ranked at the time, and they still are ranked. I think, like I said, I think Oregon looked worse in that game due to the fact that they were playing UGA. I think Ohio State went out and played a really good game against Notre Dame that was closer than I think, was more out of hand than I think the score showed. And Alabama went out and beat Texas, who looks like they might be better this season as well. Michigan just hasn't had a win like that against any type of opponent that's even ranked or, for lack of a better term, respectable, honestly. Like I don't know. Like I don't see those teams really challenging anybody. But I can't deny the fact that Michigan has gone out there and handled business, and they were there last year and they looked this good last year as well. Took a while for Harbaugh to get it right, but right before, I think if he had one more bad season last year, he would have been gone, and he found out what he needed to do. JJ McCarthy is their starting quarterback. He's gone out there. He's playing really well so far. I think when I checked his numbers, still throwing something like 80%, which is crazy. Yeah, he's throwing 88%. He is 30 for 34 so far as Michigan's quarterback. Hasn't thrown any interceptions, only 3 touchdowns and 473 yards. So they just don't throw as much. They're more of a running team, and Corum and Stokes get it done for them. Blake Corum, that is. And yeah, I have to put Michigan number 4. But I will say this about Michigan. I think that this goes for Michigan and a lot of teams this week, because we're finally getting out of the cupcake weeks, more into conference play and just playing better teams, honestly, in general, kind of seeing where teams have settled in at and how good they're going to be this season. And Michigan, I think they will play their best team that they have faced so far this weekend in Maryland with Talia Tungavailoa and then Mike Loxley, two Bama products. Bama / Maryland products now. But yeah, this would be the best team they played so far. Talia looks good. He has had a few mistakes here and there, and I think those are things that he can't have against a team like Michigan if he's going to have the chance to win. In Maryland, come out with a win, or at least make that game closer than I think what Michigan would like, make Michigan a little bit uncomfortable, because I think not I think Michigan, the best part of their team is defense, and their offense is good. And I just gave you the numbers of JJ McCarthy, but I think if you put him under a little bit more pressure and cause him to get uncomfortable, move out of the pocket, do some things that aren't as scripted, I I believe that he will struggle more and maybe even make a mistake by throwing a pick or throwing an interception or something like that. So Maryland could capitalize off of that. Do I see Maryland winning this game against Michigan? No. But do I see it being a lot closer than the rest of Michigan's games have been this season? Yes. And also that running back they have over there with the Terrapins, Hemby, he looks like he's been great so far this season. I think he's had over 150 yards in 2 out of their 3 games already. Matchup predictor for ESPN has Maryland only having a 15% chance of winning that game, which sounds about right if we're being honest. I don't think it's going to be necessarily close, just closer. So yeah, but that running back Hemby, Roman Hemby, so far this season, 151 yards against SMU, 114 against Buffalo. Both games that they were able to win a little bit closer than their game against Charlotte, but I do think that Maryland will go out there. I think that they will at least challenge Michigan more than the other teams, like I've said, and hopefully make that one closer. See if they can get something crazy done and knock off Michigan. That'd be crazy. That'd be wild. But I think what it's going to take for Maryland is just you can't make any mistakes at the quarterback position in Talia, and then on top of that, defensively, they have to figure out a way to stop the run of Corum, McCarthy, and Stokes. So moving on to the more interesting parts of the rankings, because top 4 never changed. Number 5, didn't change for me either. Where we see our first changes is starting at 6, but number 5, I'm gonna go ahead and put Oklahoma. That defense does look better with Brett Venables. I've said that multiple times, but like every week they go out and I watch them and I see the differences that have been made in that defense, and even in recruiting, getting a little bit better players just off rip due to Brett Venables' reputation of what he was able to do with the Clemson defense over the 5-6 year period of them being Clemson. Um, but yeah, I think that defense does look really good, or not really good, but at least better. There has been times where you can see some hiccups. One thing I will say about Oklahoma, which is why I have them at 5 versus at 4 over Michigan, is I don't know if I'm fully sold on Dylan Gabriel. Honestly, so far right now, I think he's been a little bit up and down. He's had some games where he's had to get it done more with his feet than with his arm, and I just don't see that being the recipe to win them a Big 12 championship, and then on top of that, get into the playoffs and actually challenge or anything like that. But I mean, no one really expected them to be a challenger off rip like this with a new coach, a new quarterback. Like they really like reset that team. But I do think that Oklahoma is worthy of being in the number 5 spot. But like I said, I just have a few questions with Dylan Gabriel so far. He's 66% this season, 7 touchdowns, 52 for 78, and he's also their 3rd leading rusher. But yeah, I don't know. I would like to see him up against a better defense just to see what exactly would go on in that type of scenario. The next closest game I would like to see him against is Texas, and that's in 2-3 weeks from now, October 8th, and then November 5th against Baylor. So I would like to see him in those 2 games, see if he can get it done that way. But yeah, number 5, Oklahoma. 6, this is where we see the first change. USC over Clemson. I'm sorry, man. Every time I watch Clemson, I'm like, like it's just gross, bro. Like And people always say this, and it was funny because I actually talked to my dad about this earlier. Is that without a top 10, top quarterback draft prospect, Dabo Sweeney is very suspect. He's very normal. You know what I'm saying? Like he don't look like the guy that he was looking like before. And now that he's lost Brett Venables, I think it's even more. But I will say that defense is really what is keeping Clemson alive. They were able to get 3 picks and then a fumble recovery in that game against Louisiana Tech, which I think if you take those away and take the missed field goal away from Louisiana Tech, I think that game looks a lot closer. Not I think, I know it does. 48-20 is what Clemson won by. I completely skipped over USC but USC, I'll touch on that a little bit. There's just not much to say, honestly. USC, they've showed that they could get it done in the air and on the ground. There are 2 running backs that they have over there. Austin Jones and Travis Dye look really good. Both had 100-yard games last game. Travis Dye really leading that group, honestly. And yeah, I think Lincoln Riley has them rolling in the right direction. Caleb Williams looks like he can be a Heisman candidate as well. Some of the other players I mentioned, Stetson, CJ Stroud, Bryce Young, all these other people. So yeah, Caleb Williams is up in that group, in that top conversation. I would like to see what they look like as they get a little bit deeper into their schedule. I wish they played Washington. I know they're on opposite sides of the division, so they won't see that matchup unless it comes to a championship game. And USC, I'm trying to remember who they play this week. Oh, yeah, Oregon State. That was one thing that I wanted to talk about. I do think Oregon, like I said, there's a lot of teams who play their best team so far this season in this week. Oregon State is arguably the second or third best team in the conference right now, from what I can tell. Well, actually, no. I'll put them fourth because you still have Utah. I don't know. I think Utah loses a few more games this season, so I think by the end of the season, I think Oregon State will have passed Utah. But I do think that, or I don't think, I know that Oregon State has been able to do some pretty good things defensively so far this season. They haven't played anyone super hard yet. Boise State, Fresno State, Montana State, a whole lot of states. But then they go out and now they play USC. USC should be able to take care of that. The spread for that game is 6.5. I think USC covers that, and Caleb Williams goes out, throws at least 2 touchdowns, 250 yards. Yeah, I think it will be a good game for USC to further cement themselves as a true challenge out there in the Pac-10. On to number 7, which I already touched on a little bit with Clemson. I said this, like if without 3 picks, a fumble recovery, and a missed field goal, Clemson is in a close game with Louisiana Tech. That's not real. Like, get serious, bro. Like, that's why I'm like, nah. Like, I can't sit here and say Clemson is going to be that team. They have DJ. I said Ooey Gooey Gooey last time. This time I'll give him his real name, DJ Ooey Ungavale. Ooey Ungavale? Ooey DJ Ooey Gooey Gooey. I don't care, man. That bro, what? I don't believe in that man at all. I think that Dabo is struggling a little bit. I would like to see what they look like this week when they play Wake Forest. That's something I'll talk about at the end of this episode, but I think that's going to be a very interesting game and might surprise some people of the result. I don't want to say Wake Forest will win, but I think that game is going to be very close versus what I think the spread had it. I mean, I'll look into that later. But yeah, Clemson, number 7, has a big chance to drop, but also has the potential to prove that they are a better team than what I'm making them out to be. So I like them at that number 7 spot. So I think between 5 and 8, all these teams have games ahead of them that can prove if they win in a certain fashion that they can be a playoff contender, especially if one of those teams in the top 4 end up losing a game. So they just have to continue winning and winning in a fashion that looks dominant. So I'll move on to number 8, not Clemson, Kentucky. I'm a little skeptical of them, but I would like to see them in 2 weeks versus Ole Miss, a little bit better offense than they've played at all this season. The best offense, I guess you could say they've played is Florida, and that was just like go watch the game. Like Anthony Richardson so far has disproved every single theory of him being this great top quarterback um in college football this season since week 1. Like he went out last game, threw a couple more picks, 112 yards, not looking good. But I will say that Kentucky, they will have their toughest challenge in 2 weeks against Ole Miss. I think Lane Kiffin in that offense, they finally found their quarterback. I'm forgetting his name right now. Not finally found, but they've cemented him as the starter. I'll find it in a second. But I am a little skeptical of Kentucky because their offense. Their defense looks pretty solid. I would like to see them against better competition, but Will Levis was getting a lot of hype, and I think he's a good quarterback. He had some uncharacteristic picks against Youngstown State last week, but their defense is just what kept them in that game, going out there flying around, playing like a fast SEC defense, honestly. And yeah, I think Stoops has that team running pretty well. It's hard to take Kentucky so serious when you see this a lot over the last 3-4 years. They look good, they look decent. They go out there and then they lose to Florida or they lose to Georgia, which makes sense, or they lose to a team that they're not supposed to. And it just seems like once they take that one loss, it's like they drop hard. It's not. It doesn't even look like the same team half the time. So I would like to see Kentucky go through a little bit more adversity, which is what I'll be excited for in 2 weeks against Ole Miss. Let me get my notes straight. Right now, Ole Miss ranked 16, Kentucky ranked number 8. It's Jackson Dart. I knew it was Jackson something because I remember seeing that, but I just didn't want to mess it up. But yeah, Jackson Dart looks like he will be the starter for Ole Miss, and we'll see what he's able to do against a Kentucky defense that has proved that they can handle their business or handle who's in front of them quite easily so far this season. Number 9. Number 9, Oklahoma State. This is where things get really weird. And we're being quite honest. I want to be SEC biased so bad and somehow find a way to fit Arkansas and Tennessee into the top 10. But I guess I'll be nice to Oklahoma State. I don't know. I don't think they're as real as everyone says they are. Spencer Sanders is a solid quarterback. He can get it done with his legs. He can get it done with his arm, and he has proved that. But that Oklahoma State defense is just not it at all to me. And they will play Baylor in a couple weeks. I think Baylor, well, they have a bye week this week, Oklahoma State, and then after that they play Baylor. Baylor defensively looks better than what Oklahoma State does. And offensively, I don't think Baylor is that far of a step down from what Oklahoma State is. I'm pretty sure if you actually go look up on ESPN at that matchup predictor right now, ESPN predicts that Baylor will win that game, and I have to agree with them. Oklahoma State is winning games and they're putting up numbers. But once again, when you watch them in that eye test, I don't see fully what everyone is seeing. And they do have 2 weeks in preparation, and they do have the chance to prove themselves. I think Spencer Sanders can go out there and play a good game, but he cannot make mistakes. Oklahoma State cannot go out there in 2 weeks and throw any picks to Baylor's defense and give them good field position to set them up to be able to do something good. And their job this week, Oklahoma State's job, is prepare their defense for that 3-headed run game that Baylor has with Craig Williams, Quaylon Jones, and I'm forgetting his first name, but Reese is the leader of that group actually. And Blake Shapen is a smart player. He plays within his game. He's not going to go out there and do too much or make many mistakes that will cost them a game. I won't say he'll go out there and win them the game and just outplay Spencer. But I do think that Baylor will win that game in a couple weeks. So right now, Oklahoma State is at 9. And I think that's a good spot because they could potentially drop in a couple weeks, and we'll see where Baylor goes up to. Number 10, last one, Tennessee. And I think that has to be the most surprising one for some people on this list is Tennessee over Arkansas. When I watch Arkansas, Arkansas's defense is atrocious. Arkansas's defense can't stop a leaky faucet. Arkansas's defense is like there's just no type of like uniformity to it. There's holes in their defensive backfield. They let guys run straight up the middle on them around the edge. I think their speed is just not fully there in terms of having an SEC defense, but their offense is great. Their offense, KJ Jefferson and that running back, I'm forgetting his name. KJ Jefferson can get it done with both his legs and his arm. I went on Twitter and I was talking mess about KJ Jefferson. I had a few Arkansas fans get on my case about that. I will say that KJ Jefferson is a good quarterback. He is a quarterback that can win you a game with his arms. Will he win you a game with his arms against A&M this week? No, but we'll talk about that a little bit too. But I don't think he will do that. And that's the reason why I have Tennessee over Arkansas right now. So far, Arkansas has given up 27 points to Missouri State, 30 to South Carolina, and 24 to Cincinnati. So overall, they've won. They won by 11 points, won by 14. That's 25. And then they won by 7 points. So overall, they've won their games by a margin of 32. But these games have been close, man. Like these games have not been easy for Arkansas to just fly through. In Missouri State putting up 27 on your team and scoring first and actually being in the lead going into halftime, 17-14 is just that's not acceptable if you're an SEC school in Arkansas. So I would have to give the credit to Missouri State going out there making that game really close. They had a late punt return for a touchdown in that game. And Arkansas had to come back, and KJ Jefferson was able to get it done. Like I said, I do trust KJ Jefferson he can win you games. Do I think he will always be able to do that? Not quite sure. A guy who I can kind of compare KJ Jefferson to when he was in college is Dak Prescott. And Dak Prescott has far exceeded expectations, which is insane because at Mississippi State, he was about the same. He could get it done with his legs. He ran a decent amount. He wasn't just a running quarterback. And then passing wise, he wasn't anything to sleep on either. You couldn't just ignore him passing wise. He could deliver the ball to his receivers. He knew how to read a defense. He knew how to go through his progressions. He just wasn't elite. And I'll say the same thing about KJ Jefferson. He's not elite, but he gets things done. But on the other side, Hendon Hooker looks real good for Tennessee. And I think Tennessee's defense is a lot better. I have to stop saying I think as much, but Tennessee's defense is a ton better than what Arkansas's is so far this season. In their 2 games that they haven't played ranked opponents, which were 2 out of the 3, they let up 6 and 10 points, which is what is supposed to happen. I know people they didn't play anybody. It was Ball State and Akron. Well, they went out there and they took care of business. They did what they were supposed to do. They I can't knock them for that. 250 yards they allowed passing wise for Akron. A lot of that coming later in the game when things were completely out of hand, and only 35 rushing yards for Akron. So that Tennessee defense they look like they've stepped up a good bit, and under Josh Heupel and everything like that. So I would like to see what they look like this week when they play Florida. I do think that they will whoop Florida, and I don't think like I said, they're going to whoop them, and it's not going to be particularly close. I think they cover the spread. I think it was like 12 points. Yeah, 11 points is the spread. They cover that easily. I give them 14, maybe even like 17 points over Florida. So, yeah, Tennessee is my number 10 team. Arkansas, honorable mention right out of it. I gave all of good reasons of why I think Arkansas can still be somewhat in that conversation. And the other team that I think honorable mention is Washington. Michael Penix Jr. I talked about that a little bit at the beginning of this episode. Um, Penix Jr. looks like he can actually be a top quarterback draft prospect. He goes out there and he does things that he plays at an elite level. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, I'm satisfied with that list. Y'all let me know. And this is the other thing. Y'all gotta let me know what y'all think of the list. Let me know if you feel like your team should be a little bit higher, your team should be lower, or someone should switch around, or you don't like some of my opinions. I want to hear what y'all think too, because I like to debate, and that's hard to do on a solo show where you're just talking with yourself. I can't debate with anybody, but I would absolutely love it if y'all get in the comments, y'all get onto my pages, y'all reach out to me and stuff like that, and let me know, hey, like, stop talking about my team. Don't say this about them. Don't say that about them. Like we can do this and all this other stuff. So yeah, I would love to debate with y'all, especially on Twitter. Go find my Twitter, Justin_Helms 34. You'll see me. I'm spinning a basketball in the picture. So yeah, we'll move into the preview. I'm trying to keep this show. I was going to keep it under 30, but right now we're like right at 27, and I did touch on some of these subjects, so we're going to see if we can keep it under 35. Clemson versus Wake Forest. That is going to be one of the bigger games this weekend, and the three games we're going to talk about: Clemson, Wake Forest, Arkansas A&M, and then Florida versus Tennessee. Clemson and Wake Forest. Wake Forest relies heavily on that passing game behind Sam Hartman. And I think they can do it. They can go out there and win against Clemson. Clemson is not just the same Clemson they've been before. Clemson, their defense is the strength of their team. And they could make it hard for Hartman. But if Hartman doesn't make any mistakes, he doesn't throw any interceptions, that is it. And of course, that makes sense. But like, that's easier said than done. If they don't make any mistakes, no turnovers, and this includes fumbles, make sure that Clemson doesn't have just great field position, punt the ball when they're supposed to, don't make any crazy decisions in terms of going for it on fourth down to try to prove a point that you can get over the hump of a team like Clemson. Like, no, go out, play the game that Wake Forest knows, which is solid defense and passing the ball, and see if you can get by Clemson. I think you would have to do a little bit more creativity in terms of passing, a few more screens, draw up some plays to get some guys more open rather than just letting your guys go one-on-one against Clemson's DBs, and make a little bit of better scheming, I would say. But I don't think it will take a ton just to go out there and beat Clemson. I'm not going to lie to you. Yeah, as long as Hartman doesn't give them good field position, I have Wake Forest being able to squeak that one out. Wake Forest is ranked, I think, right at the end of the top 25. They're at 21 right now. They are 3-0, and they've handled they've handled 2 out of their 3 games before them so far. They had a really close one with Liberty. Liberty actually went for it on a 2-point conversion, didn't end up getting it, and Wake Forest won because of that, 37-36. And even though I've said all this stuff about Wake Forest having the potential to win and what they need to do to win, I still will take Clemson to win this game just off talent alone. I think Hartman is a great quarterback, and he has to make no mistakes, and that offense in general has to make no mistakes, no penalties and stuff, like not no penalties, but very minimal penalties to be able to make it out of that game with the win. But at the same time, DJ Uyunglele and then Will Shipley have been at least good enough to get them by the games they have played so far, and I think they'll be good enough to get them through this one as long as that defense does what they're supposed to do over at Clemson. And the spread right now, they have it at a 21% chance that Wake Forest wins that game. It's a spread of only 7. I will say that Clemson doesn't cover that spread. I'm looking at this game being a high passing yard game in its 20s, 30s, but Clemson ekes it out. I give them 3 to 5 points. I'll say by 5. Um, Now on to Arkansas A&M. I think this is going to be the most interesting game out of these three that I'm talking about right here. Honestly, A&M, this is their get right part 2. They went out and they beat Miami last weekend. Was it surprising? No. Did A&M need that win for morale and confidence? Yes. And then the other thing is they were able to go out there and put their other quarterback out there. Haynes King was not doing what they wanted him to do. He was struggling a little bit last year as well, but to go out and struggle against App State, and I won't say that's ultimately the reason they lost that game, but to be a contributing factor in the loss against App State is what I think forced Jimbo Fisher's hand to make the switch to Max Johnson. And Max Johnson's not a bad quarterback. We saw him for 2 years at LSU be a starter and do solid things, you know what I'm saying? After Joe Burrow and everything like that. So I mean, he's just not Joe Burrow, which I think was what LSU was looking for, is more of a spark on offense, someone to really get them more excited. And Jaden Daniels is that guy. So yeah, Max Johnson made that transfer. He's over at A&M, and he's once again another guy who's going to play within the system. He's not going to go out there and do too much, and he might not win you the game, like I said, but he's not going to go out there and lose you that game also. So I think that Mac Johnson can definitely get that done against Arkansas. I've already said this. I don't believe in Arkansas's defense at all. And then the running game for A&M has been pretty good so far this season as well. So as long as they're able to go out there and see what the other teams did against Arkansas and Missouri State and Cincinnati and South Carolina that got them points, that allowed those teams to score points on Arkansas, if A&M is able to implement that into their system, I think they will easily take care of Arkansas, just due to the fact that, once again, Arkansas has no defense, and A&M's defense is a little bit better than the Razorbacks right now. So far, A&M has allowed 9 points against Miami. They allowed 17 against App State. But I feel as if Max Johnson started that game, or A&M was a little more creative on offense, they would have been able to get that win against App State. So yeah, if I'm choosing who wins this game, I'm gonna say A&M. Arkansas has a tough schedule ahead of them. They play A&M. They play Alabama in the next few weeks as well. They really have the chance to prove that they're a top team in the SEC West. But right now, I'd put them in that range of, they might be around where Ole Miss is at. So yeah, A&M, make this a defensive game. They can get that win out. 57% chance right now. The ESPN match predictor is giving Arkansas. Is giving A&M, and it's only a 2.5 point spread. I will say that A&M covers that spread. Actually, no, I won't say A&M covers that spread, but I do think they win this game by forcing it to be defensive. If this is a runaway game and it becomes a track meet, Arkansas wins. Low scoring game, A&M wins, and I trust A&M to get that done. Put quite simply. Last team I wanted to talk about until I say goodbye. We're hitting right at the 35-minute mark right now too. Florida versus Tennessee, and I'm going to keep this so simple and short. Tennessee's going to go out there and whoop them. Like, they're going to beat the crap out of Florida. Like, I'm not lying to you. Like, I'm so dead serious, bro. Like, it's not going to be good looking. Florida's defense is not that good. Florida on offense is struggling to find their identity. They thought their identity would be behind Anthony Richardson. He has gone out and proven everything but that. that they need to figure out what they're doing, if they're going to start throwing dink and dunk short passes, or if they're going to reel back that offensive playbook, or the freedom that Anthony Richardson has in that offensive system. And then they need to give the ball to their running backs a little bit more. The Trevor Etienne, and I'm forgetting the other running back's name, but they've gone out there and they've done pretty solid things. And if you make this just a three-headed running game for Florida, I think they will be a lot more successful versus trying to force Anthony Richardson to be something he's not right now, honestly. So just got some news about the Hawks, my Hawks. But yeah, I think Tennessee covers the spread, and it's not going to be close. I truly think that this game could get out of hand. I'm going to say Tennessee 35, Florida 21 or 14. Honestly, Florida looked terrible against South Florida. Like, they won that game by 3 points. Like, they got lucky. Like, it wasn't like it should have never been that close, quite honestly. And it's only that close. It only ended up that way because South Florida missed a field goal to tie the game to send it into overtime at the end of the game. So, yeah. Right now, I'm going to take Tennessee over Florida. And by at least 14. But okay. That wraps it up for this episode for At the Helm. Remember, the name is changed. It is At the Helm with Justin Helms. Tune in next time. I'm not sure when the next episode, well, I know for a fact next week we'll have an episode on the college football ranking, but I do also want to start talking some more NFL stuff and get into the fantasy football. I talked about that last time. I'm going to see if I have the time. Excuse me. Going to see if I have the time to produce a fantasy football episode sometime this week. I am off on the 22nd, so we'll see if I'm able to film one and push it out then. And deuce. Keep tuning in.